What most people believe about female pleasure is actually very limited, and in many cases, it leads to experiences that don't truly satisfy her. Thoughtful. Focusing only on stimulating the clitoris to bring her to a climax is often seen as the main goal, but that approach alone doesn't represent the full depth of what her body is capable of feeling. When everything is reduced to chasing that one moment of release, the overall experience becomes shallow and less meaningful than it could be. Over the years, I've seen that there are multiple ways a woman can experience pleasure, and many of them go far beyond what most people ever learn or explore. Curious. In fact, most men are only aware of one or two types at best, and that narrow understanding can actually prevent her from accessing deeper, more fulfilling sensations. When you only focus on one outcome, you unintentionally limit what her body and mind could otherwise open up to. A big misconception comes from how people think the body works. Thoughtful. Pleasure isn't just a single event that happens and ends. It can be a state, something that builds, flows, and continues. Curious. When you understand this, everything changes. Instead of trying to force a specific reaction, you begin to create the conditions where her entire system can respond naturally and more fully. At the most basic level, the type of climax most people recognize is the one created through direct stimulation of the clitoris. This involves building tension until there's a release. Curious. While it can feel intense in the moment, it's often brief and requires consistent, repetitive stimulation. For many women, this can actually be difficult to achieve and may come with pressure or overthinking, which makes it even harder. Size. Even when it does happen, it doesn't always leave her feeling deeply fulfilled. It can feel like a lot of effort for a short-lived result, and the overall experience may lack emotional depth or connection. That's why many women still feel something is missing, even when they technically reach that point. Thoughtful. Another commonly discussed experience involves stimulating the area inside the vagina, often referred to as the G-spot. This is usually approached with fingers or certain angles during penetration. However, people often expect it to feel exactly like the clitoral climax, which leads to confusion and frustration. In reality, it can feel very different. Instead of one clear buildup and release, it may come as waves or peaks that rise and fall during stimulation. Sometimes there isn't a single defining moment, but rather several smaller surges of sensation. This difference is important to understand because expecting it to behave the same way can prevent you from recognizing what's actually happening. One of the most common mistakes is trying to stimulate this area too directly without proper preparation. The body needs time to open and become responsive. If you rush straight into intense stimulation, it can cause the area to become unresponsive. Thoughtful. Gentle, attentive touch and a sense of presence are essential to awaken sensitivity first, allowing the experience to develop naturally. There's also a completely different way of approaching pleasure that very few people talk about. Curious. Instead of focusing on building tension toward a single release, you can create a continuous flow of sensation. This involves starting with soft, intentional touch, gradually increasing intensity, and allowing the feeling to spread throughout her body. When done correctly, this can lead to a state where her entire system feels engaged. Instead of a quick peak, she experiences an ongoing sense of pleasure that can last much longer. It becomes less about reaching an endpoint and more about staying within that heightened state. Many women describe this as deeply relaxing, immersive, and far more satisfying than a brief climax. Size. Interestingly, this approach often requires less effort and pressure. There's no need to rush or force anything. Calm. The focus shifts to connection, awareness, and rhythm, which allows her body to respond more freely. During penetration, there's also something that's often misunderstood. Sometimes external stimulation still plays a role, even when it seems like the pleasure is coming from within. Curious. This can lead people to believe they're experiencing something entirely internal, when in fact it's a combination of sensations. While this can still feel good, it doesn't offer the same depth as more fully developed experiences. Thoughtful. And when too much focus is placed on achieving that specific outcome, it can actually interfere with the body's ability to open up to something more expansive. As you move beyond these initial levels, the experience begins to change in a significant way. Curious. Instead of thinking about pleasure as a single moment, it becomes something that can exist continuously. The body becomes more responsive, more alive, and more capable of feeling subtle and intense sensations at the same time. When the entire area is approached with care and awareness, it can become deeply sensitive and expressive. Different parts begin to work together rather than separately, creating a sense of fullness and connection. Thoughtful. This isn't about forcing a reaction, but allowing something to unfold. Another deeper level involves areas that many people overlook or approach incorrectly. With patience and the right approach, these areas can become sources of powerful sensation. Size. However, if they've been handled roughly in the past, they may initially feel uncomfortable or even closed off. The key here is trust and gradual progression. Starting gently and building intensity slowly allows the body to relax and respond. Over time, what once felt tense or unresponsive can become a source of deep, meaningful pleasure. Thoughtful. This transformation can completely change how intimacy feels for her. At the highest level, pleasure is no longer limited to one part of the body. Instead, it becomes something that can be felt everywhere. Excited. The entire body becomes more sensitive, and even light touch can feel significant. Movement, rhythm, and connection all blend together, creating a continuous experience that doesn't depend on a single peak. In this state, everything contributes to the experience. It's not about switching between different techniques, but allowing them to flow together naturally. Thoughtful. The result is something that can last much longer and feel far more complete. What's important to understand is that focusing only on making her reach a specific point can actually limit all of this. Size. When you remove that pressure and instead focus on connection, awareness, and presence, you create space for something much greater to happen. Many people look for a formula or a set of steps that guarantee a result, but real connection doesn't work that way. Thoughtful. It's about understanding, patience, and being fully engaged in the moment. Size. When you approach intimacy this way, her body has the freedom to respond in ways that go far beyond what most people expect. Over time, as trust builds and experiences deepen, her capacity for pleasure naturally expands. It's not something that happens instantly, but something that grows with consistency and care. Thoughtful. At the end of the day, the most important part isn't the specific type of experience she has. What truly matters is the quality of the connection and how present you are with each other. Size. When every moment is approached with attention and intention, the entire experience becomes fulfilling in itself. Pleasure then becomes a natural result rather than a forced goal. It flows more easily, feels more genuine, and creates a deeper sense of satisfaction for both of you. When you shift your focus in this way, everything changes and the experience becomes something far more meaningful than just chasing a single moment.